Dad's Army remains one of the most iconic British sitcoms, capturing the hearts of millions with its gentle humor and unforgettable characters. Set during World War II, the show followed the misadventures of the Walmington-on-Sea Home Guard, led by the pompous yet lovable Captain Mainwaring. While the series continues to entertain generations, many of the talented actors who brought these beloved characters to life have sadly passed away. In this video, we remember 41 Dad's Army stars who have tragically died, reflecting on their remarkable careers, personal lives, and their legacies. Join us as we pay tribute to the actors who made Dad's Army one of the greatest comedies in television history. Arthur Lowe took on the role of Captain George Mainwaring in 1968 at the age of 53, portraying the pompous but well-intentioned leader of the Home Guard. Mainwaring's rigid sense of duty masked his deep insecurities, much like Lowe himself, who struggled with self-doubt and an increasing dependence on alcohol. Though Dad's Army brought him fame, it also became a curse, as he found himself unable to escape the role. His marriage to actress Joan Cooper was fraught with tension. She was controlling, manipulative, and managed all aspects of his life, from finances to career decisions, leaving him feeling trapped. His health declined rapidly in his later years, suffering from narcolepsy, strokes, and the emotional toll of professional stagnation. In 1981, he collapsed on stage, a humiliating reminder of his frailty. Isolated and weakened, he suffered a massive stroke and died on April 15, 1982, at the age of 66, his once commanding presence reduced to a mere whisper of the past. Clive Dunn took on the role of LCPL, Jack Jones in 1968 at 48, portraying the excitable, well-meaning butcher-turned-soldier. His boundless energy made Jones a fan favorite, but off-screen, Dunn struggled with frustration. Typecast as a doddering old man despite being in his 40s, he found it nearly impossible to secure serious roles, making Dad's Army both a blessing and a curse. Though his marriage to Priscilla Morgan was long-lasting, professional disappointments weighed heavily on him. Seeking escape, he left Britain for Portugal, isolating himself from the industry that had both made and trapped him. His later years were spent in relative obscurity, his bitterness lingering as he faded from public view. After complications from surgery, he died on November 6, 2012, at the age of 92, his final years defined by withdrawal from the world that had once adored him. John Le Mesurier stepped into the role of Sergeant Arthur Wilson in 1968 at 56, bringing charm and effortless wit to the part of the refined yet detached sergeant. Unlike his character's calm demeanor, his personal life was one of quiet despair. His first marriage ended in failure, and his second, to actress Hattie Jacques, was publicly humiliating. She brought her lover into their home while Le Mesurier passively endured the betrayal. His third wife, Joan, was a source of stability, but his growing dependence on alcohol dulled any happiness he might have found. His career was long but unfulfilled. He was respected but never considered a leading man, leaving him with a lingering sense of underachievement. As years passed, cirrhosis ravaged his body, and his once refined features became gaunt and worn. He died from a stomach hemorrhage on November 15, 1983, at the age of 71. His final words, "It's all been rather lovely," masked the deep sadness of a man who never quite believed he had achieved greatness. Ian Lavender portrayed the naive and well-meaning PTE. Frank Pike in Dad's Army, joining the cast in 1968 at the age of 22. His character, the youngest and most sheltered member of the platoon, was the frequent target of Mainwaring's exasperation, yet his boyish innocence made him endearing. Despite the show's success, Lavender struggled to escape Pike's shadow, facing typecasting that limited his career options. His first marriage to Suzanne Kirchhoff ended in divorce, and although his second marriage to Michelle Hardy provided some stability, his life was marked by severe health battles. A near-fatal heart attack in 2004 left him weakened, and he later endured a difficult fight against bladder cancer, which further eroded his health. As the years passed, he saw his former castmates pass away one by one, leaving him among the last survivors of Dad's Army. By the time he died on February 2, 2024, at the age of 77, he had largely retreated from public life, his final years spent in declining health and isolation, with his once thriving career a distant memory. Arnold Ridley took on the role of PTE. Charles Godfrey in 1968 at 72 years old, portraying the gentle, kind-hearted medic of the platoon. His character was a quiet but essential presence in the show, much like Ridley himself, a man often overlooked despite his remarkable past. Before Dad's Army, Ridley had lived through unimaginable horrors, serving in both world wars and suffering lifelong injuries from battlefield trauma. His body bore the scars of combat, leaving him with chronic pain, yet his contributions as a playwright and actor were frequently overshadowed. His personal life was marked by a search for stability. Married 3 times, he finally found some solace with his third wife, Althea Parker, but financial struggles plagued them both. Ridley never reaped the benefits of his past successes, as his wartime injuries prevented him from maintaining a steady career outside of Dad's Army. He passed away on March 12, 1984, at the age of 88. Frank Williams played Reverend Timothy Farthing in Dad's Army, joining the cast in 1969 at 38. His character, the mild-mannered yet somewhat oblivious vicar, frequently found himself unintentionally drawn into the platoon's antics, adding to the show's humor. While Williams had a long and steady acting career, he struggled with loneliness in his personal life. Never marrying and without children, he dedicated himself to work, but as the years passed, he grew increasingly isolated. Though he remained active in Dad's Army fan events, the deaths of his co-stars weighed heavily on him, leaving him one of the last surviving members of the cast. His health deteriorated in his final years, and by the time he passed away on June 26, 2022, at the age of 90, he had largely withdrawn from public life. His contributions to British television were respected, but his later years were marked by solitude, with few left to share in the memories of his time in the spotlight. John Laurie became PTE. James Fraser in 1968 at 71, portraying the grim, superstitious Scotsman whose dark warnings of doom amused audiences. However, Laurie himself was a man of great intensity, haunted by an unfulfilled artistic ambition. A Shakespearean actor at heart, he resented being remembered primarily for a comedy role. Though he had an extensive career, he felt overlooked and underappreciated. His marriage provided little comfort in his later years, as he became increasingly reclusive. His health deteriorated, and emphysema, worsened by years of smoking, left him gasping for breath, his powerful voice reduced to a whisper. Bitter and weary, he spent his final days in frustration, reflecting on a career that never met his expectations. He died from emphysema on June 23, 1980, at 83, his legacy forever tied to a role he had spent years trying to escape. James Beck brought charm and quick wit to Dad's Army as PTE. Joe Walker, beginning the role in 1968 at 39. His character, a smooth-talking spiv who could acquire anything for the platoon, became one of the show's most beloved figures. Off-screen, however, Beck's life was marred by personal demons. Though married to his wife Kay, his heavy drinking put an immense strain on their relationship, and his relentless work schedule took a toll on his health. Just as his career was beginning to flourish, disaster struck. His long-term alcohol abuse led to acute pancreatitis, which rapidly worsened. In the summer of 1973, he was rushed to the hospital in agonizing pain, and within days, he was dead at just 44. His sudden passing devastated his colleagues, forcing Dad's Army to carry on without him. His role was never recast, but Beck's absence left a void that could never be filled, his promising career cut tragically short before he could enjoy its full rewards. Bill Pertwee took on the role of Chief Warden Hodges in Dad's Army from 1968 at the age of 42, portraying the pompous and antagonistic air raid warden who constantly clashed with Mainwaring and his men. Though widely recognized for his comedic talent, Pertwee struggled to shake off the association with Hodges, leaving him largely confined to similar roles for the rest of his career. He married Marion McLeod, and though their relationship endured, it was tested by long periods of separation due to his work. As the years passed, Pertwee watched many of his colleagues die, leaving him increasingly isolated. His later years were marked by health problems and a fading presence in the entertainment world, as younger generations no longer recognized him. He died on May 27, 2013, at the age of 86, his final years spent in relative obscurity, with his once thriving career gradually slipping away into television history. Wendy Richard played the lively and quick-witted Edith Parrish in Dad's Army in 1970 at 27, the clever and confident girlfriend of Private Walker. Though she found greater success in Are You Being Served? In EastEnders, her personal life was filled with heartache. She endured 2 disastrous marriages, one to an abusive man who controlled her finances, and another to a husband who betrayed her trust. Despite her fame, she struggled with deep insecurities and lifelong depression, exacerbated by her inability to have children, a sorrow she rarely spoke of publicly. Her biggest battle came with breast cancer, which returned multiple times, each recurrence more aggressive than the last. In her final months, she withdrew from public life, her once vibrant presence overshadowed by the relentless progression of the disease. She passed away on February 26, 2009, at 65, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant performances but a life haunted by personal pain. Harold Bennett joined Dad's Army in 1969 at the age of 71, playing the eccentric and often bewildered Mr. Blewett. His character provided comedic relief with his forgetfulness and odd remarks, but in reality, Bennett's life had been filled with struggles. He had spent decades in minor and uncredited roles, only achieving widespread recognition late in life. His personal life was equally difficult. His wife passed away early, leaving him a widower for much of his life. His relationships with his children were distant, and he spent his later years largely alone. Though he enjoyed his time on Dad's Army, his success came too late to bring him true contentment. In his final years, he battled declining health, suffering a heart attack that claimed his life on September 11, 1981, at the age of 82. With few remaining to mourn him, his contributions to British comedy gradually faded into obscurity, his legacy remembered only by dedicated fans of the show. John Ringham took on the role of the rigid and rule-abiding Captain Bailey in Dad's Army in 1968 at 40, portraying an officer whose strict adherence to protocol often put him at odds with the platoon's unconventional methods. A prolific actor, Ringham appeared in countless television shows, but true stardom eluded him, leaving him with a sense of professional dissatisfaction. He poured himself into his work, straining his marriage and creating a growing emotional distance between him and his daughter. As he aged, his health declined, and he was diagnosed with cancer, leading to a grueling and painful fight against the disease. Once a familiar face on British television, he faded from public consciousness in his later years, left to battle his illness largely in solitude. He died on October 20, 2008, at 80, a once busy actor now merely a footnote in the industry he had devoted his life to. Talfrin Thomas played the eccentric and inquisitive Private Cheeseman in Dad's Army in 1973 at 51, portraying a journalist-turned-soldier who eagerly documented the platoon's adventures. Despite his distinctive look and strong character work, Thomas struggled to break free from typecasting, frequently landing only minor or comedic roles. His career was marked by frustration, as he longed for more serious acting opportunities that never came. His personal life was equally troubled, married twice, both relationships ended in estrangement, leaving him emotionally isolated from his 2 children. Financial difficulties plagued him in his later years, and as his health declined, he became increasingly reclusive. His tragic end came on November 4, 1982, at 60, when he suffered a fatal heart attack alone at home. Days passed before his death was discovered, a heartbreaking conclusion for a man who had spent his life yearning for recognition. Don Estelle portrayed the cheerful and well-meaning Gerald in Dad's Army in 1969 at 36, a role that, like much of his career, was small but memorable. Standing just 4 feet 9 inches, he faced bullying and ridicule throughout his childhood, shaping a deep-seated insecurity that followed him into adulthood. He gained brief fame in It Ain't Half Hot Mom, but his career declined sharply afterward, leaving him struggling for work. Reduced to selling CDs of his own music in shopping centers, he became bitter, feeling abandoned by an industry that had once embraced him. His marriage collapsed under financial strain, and he became estranged from his only son, spending his final years in isolation. Ravaged by illness and depression, he died on August 2, 2003, at 70, a once beloved performer now a forgotten figure, his final days filled with frustration and regret. Fulton McKay portrayed the stern Captain Ramsey in Dad's Army in 1973 at the age of 51. Ramsey was a disciplined, no-nonsense officer who often clashed with the platoon, embodying authority and order. McKay, best known for his later role in Porridge, found career success, but his personal life was filled with heartbreak. Married to actress Sheila Manahan, the couple longed for children but were never able to conceive, a silent sorrow that weighed on them both. McKay threw himself into work to mask the pain, but the pressure took a toll on his health. In the mid-1980s, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, a cruel disease that left him in agony. His once strong and authoritative presence was reduced to frailty as he battled through excruciating treatments that ultimately failed. In his final months, he became reclusive, rarely seeing friends or colleagues. He died on June 6, 1987, at the age of 64, his final days marked by suffering and solitude. Larry Martin played a nameless soldier in Dad's Army in 1969 at 35, a minor role that reflected his lifelong struggle to gain real recognition in the acting world. Though he worked steadily in television, he never achieved widespread fame, which left him financially and emotionally strained. His marriage, once a source of stability, collapsed under the pressure of his career disappointments, leaving him to navigate life alone. He fathered 2 children, but as his personal struggles grew, he became increasingly distant from them. Suffering from chronic health issues and worsening depression, his later years were marked by solitude, with fewer and fewer friends or colleagues reaching out. He died on August 7, 1994, at 60, with the cause of death unascertained. His passing went largely unnoticed, a tragic fate for a man who had dedicated his life to a craft that never truly rewarded him. Ronnie Brody played the lively Bob in Dad's Army in 1973 at the age of 55. Bob, a quick-witted and friendly shopkeeper, added humor to the show, but Brody's real life was far from lighthearted. Despite working consistently in film and television, he was never a leading man, often cast in minor, forgettable roles. This lack of recognition weighed heavily on him, leading to deep insecurity. His personal life was equally troubled. His first marriage ended in a bitter divorce, and his second marriage collapsed under financial strain. He had 1 daughter from his first marriage, but their relationship soured over the years, and they rarely spoke. By the late 1980s, severe arthritis left him in chronic pain, making acting nearly impossible. Isolated and struggling financially, he spent his final years in a small, cluttered apartment, rarely seeing visitors. He passed away on May 8, 1991, at the age of 72, his death barely acknowledged by the industry he had spent decades in. Eric Chitty played Mr. Clerk in Dad's Army in 1970 at the age of 63, portraying a meticulous and somewhat pedantic character who ensured paperwork was always in order. Eric had a brilliant mind, deeply passionate about literature and history, yet despite his education and talent, he spent most of his career in the shadows, never quite achieving leading man status. His personal life was equally unfulfilling. His marriage was one of convenience rather than love, marked by quiet resentment rather than affection. His 2 children grew distant as they pursued their own lives abroad, leaving him to grow old without their presence. In his later years, his eyesight deteriorated so badly that he could no longer read, a devastating loss for a man who had found solace in books. Isolated and increasingly frail, he passed away on July 22, 1977, at the age of 70. The cause of death was never disclosed, and his passing, like much of his life, went largely unnoticed by the public. Campbell Singer played the authoritative Major General Menzies in Dad's Army in 1972 at the age of 63. Menzies was a commanding and strategic leader, respected within the military ranks. Singer, a prolific character actor, built a career playing policemen and military officials, but his personal life was filled with quiet misery. His marriage was deeply unhappy, with constant arguments and long periods of estrangement. He had 2 children, but his distant nature made it difficult for him to connect with them. As his career waned in the early 1970s, work became scarce, and financial worries plagued him. He suffered from severe heart disease, which left him weak and unable to work in his final years. By the time he passed away on February 16, 1976, at the age of 66, he was largely forgotten by the industry, a once familiar face now faded into obscurity. Avril Angers played Frida, the telephone operator, in Dad's Army in 1969 at the age of 51. Frida was known for her cheerful demeanor and efficiency, always ready to connect calls with a smile. Avril had once been a celebrated variety performer, beloved for her comedic timing, but as television evolved, opportunities for her dwindled. She never married, though she had a long-term relationship with a fellow entertainer who eventually left her for a much younger woman. Heartbroken, she buried herself in work, but as roles became fewer, loneliness crept in. Without children or close family, she spent her later years in near solitude, her health failing due to severe arthritis that left her unable to move without pain. She rarely left her home, and when she was hospitalized with pneumonia in late 2005, few even knew she was there. She died on November 9, 2005, at the age of 87, alone and largely forgotten by the industry she had once thrived in. Martin Wildeck portrayed the formidable Major Reagan in Dad's Army in 1968 at the age of 54. Reagan was a strict, no-nonsense officer who enforced discipline within the platoon. Wildeck had a long career in television, but true stardom eluded him. He was married and had 2 children, but his relentless dedication to acting created distance between him and his family. He spent long months away on set, missing birthdays and milestones, and his marriage eventually deteriorated into cold indifference. In later years, his health declined sharply. He suffered a debilitating stroke that left him partially paralyzed, stripping him of the independence he once prized. Isolated and struggling with financial difficulties, he lived out his final years in a small flat, rarely seeing visitors. He passed away on April 29, 1988, at the age of 74, a man who had once portrayed strength and authority but died alone, his legacy fading with time. Gabor Vernon played the Polish officer in Dad's Army in 1973 at the age of 48, portraying a brave and determined soldier. Born in Hungary, he escaped the turmoil of war only to struggle as an immigrant actor in Britain, where his thick accent led to frequent typecasting. Though he worked steadily, he was rarely given substantial roles, a reality that left him bitter and frustrated. His personal life was equally troubled. His 2 marriages ended in failure, both wives leaving him due to his temper and increasing despondency. His only son, resentful of his father's absence and emotional distance, severed contact in adulthood, leaving Gabor to face his later years alone. Chronic heart problems and financial struggles plagued his final decade, forcing him into a reclusive existence. He died on April 23, 1985, at the age of 60, the cause of death undisclosed. His passing, like his career, was overshadowed and quickly forgotten by the industry he had fought so hard to be a part of. Carmen Silvera portrayed Mrs. Fiona Gray in Dad's Army in 1970 at 48, playing a sophisticated and charming woman. Off-screen, however, her life lacked the romance and fulfillment she often portrayed in her roles. She married young, but the relationship ended in heartbreak, leaving her emotionally guarded and hesitant to love again. She never remarried or had children, and though she had many colleagues in the entertainment industry, she often felt lonely, particularly as she aged. While she remained a respected actress, she never achieved mainstream fame, and financial insecurity became a growing concern in her later years. With age came illness. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, which slowly stole her strength and ability to work. She spent her final days in quiet suffering, reflecting on the career that never quite reached its full potential. She passed away on August 3, 2002, at the age of 80, alone in the face of an illness that offered no mercy. Anthony Sharp played the War Office Brigadier in Dad's Army in 1969 at the age of 54, embodying a stern and bureaucratic military figure. Despite his commanding presence, his career was a series of missed opportunities, always a supporting player, never the star. He longed for leading roles, but his refined, aristocratic demeanor confined him to typecast authority figures. Off-screen, his life was marked by solitude. He never married and had no children, living in a modest home with only his books and scripts for company. Though he had professional acquaintances, he lacked close friendships and grew increasingly bitter about his unfulfilled ambitions. As years passed, his health deteriorated, and he withdrew from the industry entirely, spending his final days in isolation. He died on July 23, 1984, at the age of 69 from natural causes, his name largely forgotten in the entertainment world he once fought so hard to be part of. Barbara Windsor joined Dad's Army in 1968 at 31 as Laura LaPlace, bringing charm and vibrancy to the show. Though she exuded confidence and glamour on screen, her real life was riddled with personal hardships. She suffered through 3 failed marriages, including a destructive relationship with gangster Ronnie Knight, which brought scandal and turmoil into her life. Though she longed for true love and stability, she often found herself in toxic relationships, manipulated by men who took advantage of her generosity and trusting nature. Despite her bubbly exterior, she struggled with deep insecurity, exacerbated by the pressures of fame. In her later years, she faced her greatest battle, Alzheimer's disease, which cruelly erased her memories and left her completely dependent on caregivers. Once the heart of every party, she spent her final years in confusion and frailty, fading from the public eye. She died on December 10, 2020, at the age of 83, her once dazzling life reduced to a tragic fight against a relentless illness. Philip Maddock played the ruthless U-boat captain in Dad's Army in 1973 at 39, delivering one of the show's most memorable moments. Though he enjoyed a prolific career, he was often cast in menacing or villainous roles, limiting his range and preventing him from achieving widespread recognition. His personal life was equally turbulent. His marriage to actress Ruth Maddock ended in divorce, leaving him heartbroken and struggling to maintain a close relationship with his children. The breakdown of his family life haunted him, and though he continued acting, the weight of personal and professional disappointments never left him. In his later years, he faced his toughest challenge yet, a grueling battle with cancer that left him physically and emotionally drained. Once a charismatic and imposing presence, he spent his final days in quiet suffering, reflecting on a life that never quite lived up to his hopes. He died on March 5, 2012, at the age of 77. Who is your favorite character in Dad's Army? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.